The morning sun painted soft gold across the marble floors of the Rivera estate, spilling through tall windows where silence lived like a secret. Inside the grand hall, a little girl's footsteps echoed, light, quick, curious. Her laughter filled the air, chasing away the stillness that money had built around her father's lonely world. Lily clutched her sketchbook to her chest as she ran toward the study, her pigtails bouncing like tiny springs of joy. "Daddy," she called out, voice bright and unfiltered, "I saw someone who looks just like me. But," she frowned, searching for the right word, "she's kinda ugly." Ethan Rivera, the billionaire no newspaper could ever stop writing about, looked up from his laptop. He was dressed sharp as always, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, face tired. He blinked, unsure he heard her right. "An ugly look-alike," he repeated with a chuckle. "You've been watching too many fairy tales again, kiddo." But Lily's eyes were serious. "No, Daddy." She was right outside the park. Same eyes. Same face. Only dirty and sad. Something inside Ethan twitched, a flicker of unease beneath the comfort of disbelief. He tried to smile, to wave it off, but her words clung to him like cold mist. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "people can look similar sometimes. Maybe she just reminded you of yourself." Lily shook her head firmly. "No. She was me. Just broken." Her innocence sliced through him more sharply than she'd ever known. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He had built empires, crushed competition, and walked through storms of greed and loss. But nothing unnerved him more than his daughter's quiet certainty. That evening, when the house was quiet again, he found himself by the tall window, staring out into the endless city below. Somewhere out there, in the streets his cars never touched, a shadow of his daughter might be walking, shivering, alone. For the first time in years, Ethan Rivera felt something rare. Not power. Not fear. Guilt. Before we go deeper into this story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It's always beautiful to know how far a single moment of emotion can travel. Drop your city below. Maybe kindness is closer than we think. The next day, Ethan couldn't shake off Lily's words. During breakfast, she kept drawing, sketching the girl again and again. A small, sad face. The same freckles. The same light eyes. He felt a chill creep through him as she whispered, "Daddy, she was cold." Later that day, he ordered his driver, Michael, to reroute their trip. "Let's take a detour," he said casually. Michael looked confused. The man hadn't changed his route in years. As their black sedan rolled down the cracked edges of the city's south side, Ethan stared out the tinted window. The world changed there. Glass towers turned into crumbling walls, perfume into dust, and silence into crying wind. He hadn't been here since before Lily was born. "Daddy," Lily said, pressing her small hand against the glass, "that's where she was." The car slowed near an abandoned bakery. A small figure sat near a trash bin, hugging her knees. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, her face hidden under grime, but when she looked up, Ethan froze. Same blue eyes. Same dimple on the left cheek. His heartbeat thundered. "Stop the car." Michael hesitated. "Sir, it's not safe." "Stop," Ethan commanded, his voice a whisper turned sharp. He stepped out, the city's noise suddenly distant. The girl flinched as he approached, shrinking away. "It's okay," he said, kneeling. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her gaze flicked between his suit, his shoes, and the little girl peeking from the car. Her lips trembled. "She's me." Lily gasped softly. Ethan's stomach turned cold. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked gently. "Grace," she murmured. "At least, that's what the lady at the shelter used to call me." Her voice was weak, like a candle struggling against the wind. Ethan noticed a bracelet on her wrist, one he recognized. His company's charity logo. He'd signed hundreds of them years ago, gifts for orphans from his foundation. And now one of them stood before him, looking like his own daughter's reflection through sorrow. He didn't know why, but something inside him broke open. Maybe it was the way her eyes begged without words, or maybe it was because, for the first time, he saw what his money had never touched, the quiet ache of being forgotten. He reached for her hand. "You're safe now, Grace." She hesitated, then whispered, "You don't even know me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I should." As Lily ran forward and hugged the girl, Ethan felt a strange warmth melt through the ice he'd lived in for years. And though he didn't know it yet, this moment, this small act, would unravel a truth buried far deeper than he imagined. Grace's small hands trembled in Ethan's grasp, her skin cold as marble. The city wind whipped through the alley, lifting strands of her dirty hair across her face. Lily clung to her father's leg, wide-eyed, confused yet strangely calm, as if she already knew this girl wasn't dangerous, just lost. Ethan took off his jacket and wrapped it around Grace's shoulders. She shivered beneath it, the fabric swallowing her small frame. "Where are your parents?" he asked softly. Grace looked away. "Don't know, they left when I was little. Sometimes I think they'll come back, but..." She bit her lip, the words fading like a forgotten prayer. He nodded quietly, his chest tightening. For a man who had everything, he suddenly felt powerless. He turned to Michael. "We're taking her home." "Home, sir?" the driver asked, glancing nervously around. "Yes," Ethan said firmly. "She needs warmth. Food. A doctor." Grace's eyes widened in disbelief. "You mean, your house?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Just for tonight." Inside the car, Lily sat beside her, studying Grace as if she were a reflection in a cracked mirror. "You look just like me," she whispered. Grace smiled shyly. "You look cleaner." Lily giggled, and for a moment, the weight in the car lifted. But Ethan couldn't stop watching Grace's face in the rearview mirror, the same features, the same expressions. It was eerie, almost unnatural, as if fate had painted two versions of the same child in very different colors. When they arrived at the Rivera estate, Grace's eyes grew wide. The mansion towered like a dream she didn't believe existed. "This place is bigger than the whole shelter," she breathed. Ethan's throat tightened. He guided her inside gently. "Let's get you something to eat." The dining room was bathed in soft amber light, chandeliers glowing like captive stars. Grace stared at the silverware, afraid to touch anything. Lily held her hand, showing her how to use the fork. "Do you like spaghetti?" she asked with a grin. Grace nodded, twirling the pasta carefully. "It's good," she said between bites, eyes shining with both hunger and gratitude. Ethan watched in silence. Each word, each motion she made pulled something deep within him. She didn't just look like Lily, she moved like her too. The same way of blinking, the same tilt of her head. He swallowed hard. "Grace," he said gently, "how old are you?" 7, she replied. His hand froze midair. So was Lily. The room fell still. If you were sitting there, watching a man bring a shivering child into warmth for the first time, what would you have done? Would you open your door too, or just pass by like everyone else? Tell me your answer in the comments, and if your heart whispered yes, then tap like. Sometimes one small act of kindness still means everything. After dinner, the maids prepared a guest room. But Grace hesitated at the door. "It's too big," she whispered, eyes darting around the grand space. "I can sleep on the floor." Ethan knelt down beside her. "Not tonight. You deserve a bed, Grace." Her lip trembled. "Nobody ever said that to me before." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time someone did." Later, as Lily slept, Ethan stood in the hallway, staring at the two identical sleeping faces, one tucked beneath silk sheets, the other beneath borrowed warmth. The resemblance was haunting. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone, and called Dr. Harper, his family physician. "I need you to run a DNA test," he said quietly. Discreetly. There was a pause. "Ethan, whose DNA?" He looked through the doorway at Grace's peaceful face. "Mine. And a little girl I just met." The doctor didn't question further. "I'll send a kit in the morning." When Ethan finally went to his study, the city lights outside blurred through the glass. He stared at his reflection and saw a man torn between truth and fear. If Grace was who he was beginning to suspect, then the past he had buried under success was about to claw its way back. At dawn, Lily came running in with her usual burst of energy, but this time she wasn't alone. Grace followed, clean, brushed, wearing one of Lily's dresses. Ethan's chest tightened. For a heartbeat, it was impossible to tell them apart. Lily laughed. "Daddy, now you can't guess who's who." He smiled weakly. "You're right, kiddo. I really can't." The laughter faded into quiet. Grace's eyes met his, and for a split second, he saw something there, something old. A sadness that didn't belong in a 7-year-old's gaze. And that's when his phone buzzed with a message. The test kit had arrived. He stared at it on his desk, his pulse heavy in his ears. "Michael," he called out quietly. "Get Dr. Harper on standby. I want results as soon as possible." The driver nodded. "Yes, sir." Ethan leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "What have I done?" Because deep down, he already knew this wasn't coincidence. This was consequence. The sun had barely risen when Ethan found himself pacing his study, the DNA kit open before him like a silent judge. He stared at the cotton swabs, unable to bring himself to touch them. He could hear the faint laughter of the two girls echoing from down the hall, identical giggles, overlapping perfectly, as if life itself was mocking him. He took a slow breath, the air heavy with hesitation. "I just need answers," he whispered to no one, then gently swabbed the inside of Grace's cup and his own toothbrush. His hands trembled slightly as he sealed the test envelopes. By the time Dr. Harper arrived, Grace was in the garden with Lily, chasing butterflies. Ethan watched from the window, his jaw clenched. The sight should have been sweet, two little girls laughing under the sunlight, but to him, it felt like standing on the edge of something vast and painful. Dr. Harper entered quietly. "You look like you haven't slept," he murmured. "I haven't," Ethan replied. He handed him the samples. "Run it fast. Quietly." The doctor nodded, understanding more than he said. "I'll call you tonight." When the car pulled away, Ethan stood there for a long moment, staring at his reflection in the glass. For a man who could buy anything, he had never felt so powerless. Behind him, small footsteps padded across the floor. Grace peeked in timidly. "You okay, Mr. Ethan?" He turned, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking." Grace stepped closer, clutching a wilted flower in her hand. "I picked this for you. My mom said flowers can make sad people less sad." He froze. "Your mom?" Grace nodded. "She used to tell me stories about rich people who forget what hearts are for." Ethan's throat tightened. "And what did she say about them?" "She said they always remember when it's too late." Her words cut deep, soft yet sharp, pulling a memory he'd buried under years of ambition. A woman's voice, crying, pleading with him not to leave. The hospital room. The choice he made. He blinked hard. "Grace, do you remember your mom's name?" Grace thought for a moment, lips moving silently. "I think. Anna." The name hit him like a blow. Anna. The one woman he had loved and lost when greed had clouded everything else. The one he left behind when his empire began. Ethan turned away, his hand gripping the edge of the desk until his knuckles went white. Grace tilted her head. "Did I say something bad?" He shook his head quickly, kneeling down to her level. "No, no, sweetheart. You said something very important." He smiled weakly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're a very brave girl." She smiled faintly. "I just talk too much." He chuckled softly, though his eyes glistened. "That's a gift. Never lose it." When she left, Ethan sank into his chair, his heart pounding. He opened the old drawer where he'd kept everything locked away. Photos, letters, a small silver pendant. His fingers trembled as he unfolded a photograph of Anna holding a baby, smiling softly at the camera. But the photo was old. And the date printed in the corner was only weeks after he'd left. That same night, Lily fell asleep early, her small hand clutching Grace's. The two girls lay side by side, and for a fleeting second, Ethan saw something beyond explanation, the truth, waiting quietly in their resemblance. He didn't want to believe it. But deep down, he already knew. Have you ever had someone step into your life when no one else cared? Someone who showed you kindness when you least deserved it? Write yes in the comments and tell me their name. Gratitude can travel further than we think, even through a story. Later that evening, As rain began to patter against the windows, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was Dr. Harper. He hesitated before answering. "Tell me," he said quietly. The doctor's voice came slow, almost hesitant. "Ethan, you might want to sit down." He already was. His pulse thudded in his ears. "The results are back," Dr. Harper continued. "It's a match. A full paternity confirmation." Ethan felt his world tilt. The room blurred. "You're saying?" "Yes," the doctor said softly. "Grace is your daughter." Silence filled the line. The storm outside grew louder, hammering against the glass like 1,000 regrets. Ethan pressed a hand against his mouth, his eyes burning. How is that possible?" "You told me Anna passed away before Lily was born," Dr. Harper said gently. "But if Grace is 7, that means—" "That means Anna was still alive," Ethan whispered. He ended the call without another word, his hand trembling. 4 years, he had believed Anna was gone, that her silence meant death, not distance. But she had lived. She had carried his child into a world he never bothered to look for. He stood up, staring at the reflection of 2 sleeping girls in the hall mirror. 2 pieces of his heart that never should have been separated. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. And inside, Ethan Rivera, the man who owned everything, finally realized the one thing he had lost could never be bought back. The rain poured through the night like a confession from the heavens, drumming against the tall windows while Ethan sat in silence. His glass of whiskey remained untouched, his fingers tracing the rim absently. Every sound in the house, every laugh, every whisper from the hallway, felt heavier now, loaded with guilt and revelation. Grace was his daughter. Anna's daughter. He whispered the words again, quietly, as if speaking them might make them less true. But they weren't going away. His mind flashed back to years ago, the heated arguments, Anna's tears when he told her he couldn't marry a woman beneath his social image. The day he walked out, choosing empire over emotion. He thought he'd made peace with it long ago, convincing himself she'd moved on. Now he realized she hadn't, she'd simply carried his mistake in her arms, raising their child alone in a world that had forgotten her. He pressed his hands against his face. "Dear God!" A small knock broke the silence. "Daddy!" Lily peeked inside, Grace hovering shyly behind her. "Can we sleep here tonight? The thunder's scary." He forced a smile. "Of course you can." The 2 girls climbed into the big armchair beside him, wrapping themselves in a blanket. Grace looked up at him with trusting eyes, and he felt something inside him shift, a slow, painful thawing. "Daddy!" Lily whispered again. "Why does Grace have my face?" He paused, caught in the storm of his own heart. "Because, sometimes life gives us mirrors," he said softly, brushing her hair back. "They remind us of what we forget to see." Grace tilted her head. "What did you forget to see?" He swallowed hard. "A promise I once made to someone very special." The girls didn't ask more, drifting to sleep moments later. But Ethan couldn't. He sat awake between them, feeling the weight of 2 small heartbeats pressed against his arms. One child born in light, the other in shadow, both his, both innocent of the choices he made. He stared into the dark window and whispered, "I will make it right this time." The next morning, the storm had cleared. Sunlight spilled over the mansion like a second chance. Ethan called his assistant, Jason, and told him to cancel all meetings indefinitely. "Everything, sir?" Jason asked, stunned. "Everything," Ethan said. "From today, I'm done running an empire built on forgetting." Grace watched curiously as staff bustled through the halls, whispering in confusion. She tugged on Lily's sleeve. "Did he get in trouble?" Lily giggled. "No. When Daddy looks like that, it means he's going to fix something big." Grace nodded solemnly. "I wish my mom could see that." The words hit him like a stone. "Grace," he said softly, where did you last see your mom?" Grace frowned, thinking hard. She was sick. Really sick. She told me to wait at the shelter if she didn't wake up. Ethan's chest tightened. "How long ago?" "Maybe a year," she whispered. "She never came back." He turned away quickly, his jaw trembling. Anna had died alone, and he hadn't even known. Now it's your turn. What's one good thing you've done for someone who didn't expect it? Write it below, even if it's small. Maybe your story will remind someone else that kindness isn't gone. Who knows, it could change a life you'll never meet. That afternoon, Ethan drove to the old shelter himself. The place was half collapsed, its paint peeling, its gate hanging loose. Inside, an elderly caretaker recognized him immediately. "You're the man from the foundation," the old woman said, adjusting her glasses. "You used to send donations years ago." Ethan nodded slowly. "I need to know about a woman named Anna. She stayed here. She had a daughter, Grace." The caretaker's face softened with pity. "Ah, yes. Anna. Quiet woman. Always smiling, even when she was coughing her lungs out. She talked about someone, said he'd come back for her." Ethan's throat tightened. But he never did. The caretaker looked at him knowingly. "No, he didn't." He turned away, guilt pressing into his ribs like knives. "She deserved better," he whispered. "She got her wish," the woman said softly. "She asked us to promise that if anything happened, we'd make sure her little girl met her father one day." Ethan froze. "She knew." "She said he had a good heart, just a blind one." He closed his eyes, fighting the tremor in his hands. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for keeping her safe." When he returned home that night, he found Grace asleep on the couch with Lily. He knelt beside them, brushing Grace's hair gently from her forehead. "I wasn't there before," he whispered, voice trembling. "But I will be now." He didn't see the small tear that slipped from her closed eyes, or the faint smile that followed it. For the first time in years, the Rivera house felt alive again, not because of wealth, but because of forgiveness quietly beginning to bloom. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting soft patterns across the living room floor where Grace and Lily played with a jigsaw puzzle. Their laughter filled every corner of the house, blending with the quiet hum of distant life outside. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel the urge to check his phone, answer emails, or chase numbers. He just stood by the doorway and watched what real life looked like when it wasn't measured in profit. Grace looked up and waved him over. "Daddy Ethan, come help." He froze. She'd said it so naturally, so innocently, that his heart stopped for a beat. Lily giggled. "She called you Daddy." Grace blinked, unsure if she'd said something wrong. "Oh, I can call you Mr. Ethan again if you..." He crossed the room in 2 steps, kneeling between them. "No," he said softly. I'd like that. You can call me whatever makes you feel safe." Grace smiled shyly. "Then, Daddy it is." Something in him melted completely. The world outside, the empire, the headlines, none of it mattered. Only this moment did. That afternoon, he called the staff together in the main hall. "From today," he announced, "Grace Rivera is part of this family. No one treats her differently. Ever." The butler nodded respectfully, but the maids exchanged unsure glances. Grace noticed and stepped closer to Ethan, her small fingers clutching his sleeve. "It's okay," he whispered to her. "They'll learn." Over the next few days, small changes began to ripple through the mansion. Grace's laughter echoed from rooms that had long stood silent. Lily taught her how to paint. Ethan began cooking breakfast himself, badly, but with a grin that even the maids couldn't help but love. Still, at night, when the lights dimmed and the house grew quiet, Grace sometimes woke up crying. Ethan would rush in, sitting beside her as she whispered through trembling lips, "She said you'd come back one day, and I told her I didn't believe her." His chest would ache each time, hearing that small, broken voice. He'd hold her hand and say softly, "She was right, Grace. I just came a little late." One evening, Lily found Grace sitting in the garden alone, staring at the sky. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Grace smiled faintly. "I think Mom's up there, watching us. Maybe she's not mad anymore." Lily tilted her head. "Why would she be mad?" "Because he didn't come," Grace whispered, glancing toward the house. "But now he did. So maybe she's smiling again." Ethan stood by the door, listening, his heart cracking open all over again. He wanted to tell her everything, to apologize, to explain, but the words never came out. They stayed trapped, heavy with regret. Later that night, as he tucked them both into bed, Grace looked at him sleepily. "Daddy, do you miss her too?" He hesitated. "Every single day." She reached out and placed her hand on his cheek. "Then it's okay. We both do." He smiled, though his eyes were wet. "You're stronger than you know, Grace." "I got it from her," she murmured, drifting into sleep. He sat there long after, just watching her breathe. Each exhale felt like forgiveness, each small twitch a heartbeat he thought he'd lost. If that moment touched something inside you, just leave a red heart hash below. Sometimes words can't hold what we feel, but a small symbol can. It's our quiet way of saying, "I understand." Days turned into weeks. The three of them became inseparable. Neighbors whispered, reporters speculated, but Ethan no longer cared. He took the girls to the park every evening, the same park where Grace had first been found. One day, as they walked past the old bakery, Grace stopped suddenly. "This is where I used to sit," she said softly. "I waited here every day. I thought maybe if I stayed long enough, someone would find me." Ethan knelt beside her, his voice thick. "I'm sorry, Grace. You shouldn't have had to wait that long." She looked up at him, her small face glowing in the sunset. "It's okay. You're here now." He hugged her tightly, tears spilling freely, no longer hidden behind pride. Lily joined the embrace, wrapping her tiny arms around both of them. The world around them blurred, traffic, noise, people, everything faded into the background. That night, Ethan stood on the balcony, looking at the stars. He whispered a promise to the one woman who had loved him despite everything. "I'll raise her right, Anna. I'll give her the life you dreamed of. I swear it." Down the hall, two little girls slept side by side, unaware that their presence had rewritten a man's entire life. And for the first time in years, Ethan Rivera felt peace, the kind that didn't come from success, but from finally learning what love truly meant. The following week, the Rivera estate was quieter than usual. The girls were at school, and Ethan finally had time alone to think, something he both needed and feared. He sat in the same study where the truth had first cracked open, holding an old photo of Anna between his hands. Her smile still carried the same warmth that haunted his dreams. He whispered softly to the photograph, "I should have looked for you. I should have fought harder." Outside, the sound of laughter floated faintly through the garden window, the girls, back early from school, chasing each other with wild joy. Ethan smiled despite the ache. Grace was healing, so was he. But not everyone had welcomed the change. That evening, during dinner, his mother called from New York, a woman known as sharp, elegant, and colder than the marble halls she lived in. "Ethan," her voice came through the speaker, clipped and firm. "I've been hearing ridiculous rumors. A second child? A girl from the streets? Tell me that isn't true." Ethan exhaled slowly. "It's true, Mother. Her name is Grace. She's my daughter." There was a long, stunned silence on the line. Then came the cutting words he expected. "You're making a spectacle of this family. A child born out of scandal? From that woman? Do you have any idea what this could do to your name, your legacy?" "My name doesn't matter anymore," he said quietly. "She does." His mother's tone sharpened. "That woman ruined you once. You're letting her ghost ruin you again." Ethan's voice hardened. "Anna didn't ruin me, Mother. I did that myself." "You're blinded by guilt," she hissed. "You don't owe that girl anything." He looked through the glass wall where Grace and Lily sat painting, their laughter rising in soft waves. "You're wrong," he said. "I owe her everything." He hung up before she could answer. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames as they danced and flickered, bright, consuming, beautiful. When Grace padded into the room, clutching her stuffed rabbit, she looked small against the vastness of the room. "Daddy, are you mad?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. He turned, startled. "Mad? No, sweetheart. Just thinking too much." She climbed onto the arm of his chair, resting her head on his shoulder. "Mom used to say thinking too much makes your heart tired." He smiled faintly. She was right. Your mom was very wise. She said people who hurt others usually hurt inside too. Ethan froze. Grace tilted her head. Is that why you look sad sometimes? He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said softly, yes. Because I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Grace looked down at the fire, her voice small. Mom said she forgave you. The words hit him like thunder. She said that? Grace nodded. When she was sick, she told me to tell you if I ever found you. She said you made a mistake, but you weren't bad. Just lost. Ethan covered his mouth, tears spilling freely. Grace, his voice broke. I don't deserve that forgiveness. She looked at him with eyes too old for her age. You don't have to deserve it. You just have to keep it. He pulled her close, hugging her tightly. I promise, I will. The fire crackled beside them, warm and quiet. Outside, the wind softened, and the house, once a monument to loneliness, now felt alive again. Be honest with yourself. Could you forgive someone who broke your heart, if they truly changed? Type forgive if you could, or never if some wounds run too deep. Let's see how many hearts still believe in second chances. The next morning, Ethan surprised the girls with an announcement. We're going on a trip, he said, handing them 2 small suitcases. Where? Lily asked, jumping excitedly. Someplace important, he replied. They drove for hours, through winding roads and fading sunlight, until the car stopped at a quiet cemetery overlooking a field of daisies. Grace's eyes widened, recognition dawning slowly. Mom's here, she whispered. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. Yes, sweetheart. She is. Together, they walked to a simple white gravestone that read Ana Morales, beloved mother and dreamer of kindness. Grace knelt beside it, her fingers tracing the letters, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Ethan stood behind her, feeling every ounce of guilt and love twist inside him. I should have come sooner, he whispered. I should have held her one last time. Grace turned and hugged him tightly. She knows you're here now. He knelt beside her, placing a single rose on the stone. The wind blew gently, carrying the faint scent of lilies. It felt like the world itself was sighing in forgiveness. He closed his eyes, whispering to the grave, "Thank you for giving me one last chance through her." And for the first time, peace didn't feel impossible. It felt earned. The wind whispered softly through the trees as Ethan and the girls sat beside Anna's grave, the afternoon light melting into gold. Grace had fallen quiet, holding the little bracelet her mother once gave her, the one Ethan had seen that first day by the bakery. It shimmered faintly in the fading sun, a fragile reminder of love that refused to die, even after everything. Lily rested her head against her father's arm. "Daddy," she murmured, "can Grace stay with us forever?" He smiled, though his voice trembled. "That's the plan, sweetheart." Grace looked up at him, uncertain. "Even if people say I don't belong?" Ethan turned toward her, eyes steady. "Especially then. Because family isn't about where you came from, it's about who refuses to let you go." She smiled, small but genuine. "Mom said that too." They stayed there until the sky began to dim. Fireflies flickered over the grass like gentle sparks of memory. As they walked back to the car, Grace turned one last time toward the grave, whispering, "I'll make you proud, Mommy." Ethan heard it, and in that fragile voice, he heard Anna too. The forgiveness he never earned but was given anyway. That night, back home, Ethan tucked both girls into bed. Grace was already half asleep, clutching her mother's bracelet against her chest. Lily smiled softly. "You look happy, Daddy." He brushed her hair back. "For the first time, maybe I am." When the lights went out, he lingered in the doorway for a while, watching them. It felt like the house itself had exhaled, its walls finally breathing after years of quiet grief. The next morning, the sound of laughter drew him into the kitchen. Grace stood on a stool beside the chef, trying to crack eggs with all the seriousness of a scientist. Lily clapped every time she managed not to drop one. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms folded, a smile tugging at his lips. "You two are going to put me out of a job." Grace grinned. "We're making breakfast today. You rest, Daddy." He chuckled softly. I think I can handle that. The smell of pancakes filled the air, warm and sweet. For once, the silence that used to haunt the Rivera estate had turned into something else entirely, the gentle music of belonging. But life had one more test left for them. A letter arrived that afternoon. It was from the foundation board, a formal notice reminding him that his personal decisions were hurting the company's image. Investors were questioning his credibility. They wanted a statement. Ethan folded the paper slowly, then looked at the photo on his desk, the three of them together, smiling by the fireplace. He picked up his phone and dialed Jason. "Call a press conference," he said. Jason hesitated. "Sir, are you sure? They're expecting you to." "I know what they're expecting," Ethan interrupted, his tone calm but firm. "And I'm done pretending." The next morning, cameras flashed as Ethan stepped onto the stage. The world's richest man, standing not behind walls of glass and gold, but before truth itself. He looked into the lenses and began. "For years, I built my life on success, but somewhere along the way, I lost what mattered most, compassion. Recently, I found something I didn't know I was missing, my daughter, Grace. She's family, and she always will be. If that makes me less of a businessman, then so be it. But it makes me more of a man." The hall fell silent. Reporters exchanged glances, unsure how to react. Some looked moved. Others simply typed faster. When he returned home that evening, the girls ran into his arms. Lily's smile was radiant. "Did they clap for you, Daddy?" He laughed softly. "Some did. Some didn't. But that's okay." Grace tilted her head. "Why?" "Because not everyone has to understand the truth," he said, pulling them close. "They just have to see it." The three of them sat together on the porch as the sky turned to dusk. Grace leaned her head against his shoulder. "I think Mommy's proud of you." He smiled, eyes glistening. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." For the first time, the ache inside him didn't hurt, it glowed, warm and human. A scar that didn't sting anymore, but told a story worth keeping. If you still believe love wins, even after the storms, the mistakes, and the years lost, comment amen. Let's fill this moment with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. That night, rain began again, soft and cleansing. Ethan stood by the window, watching it blur the city lights below. Grace's laughter echoed faintly down the hall, followed by Lily's giggle. He whispered to himself, "You did it, Anna, you brought us back together." In that quiet moment, he finally understood, forgiveness wasn't just a word. It was a bridge built out of broken pieces, strong enough to carry love home. The next morning arrived gentle and golden, like a promise finally kept. The Rivera estate no longer felt like a monument, it felt like a home. The air carried the scent of pancakes again, and this time, Ethan was the one at the stove, burning half of them but smiling anyway. Grace and Lily sat at the table, swinging their legs and laughing at every failed flip. "Daddy, you're supposed to cook the pancakes, not chase them." Lily giggled as one landed on the floor. Ethan raised his hands in mock surrender. "In my defense, that one had a mind of its own." Grace smiled, bright and warm. "It's okay, Daddy. Mommy used to burn pancakes too." He paused for a heartbeat, then smiled softly. "Then I'm in good company." They spent the day together, in the garden, under the sun, making daisy crowns and painting rocks. The kind of simple day Ethan used to think he was too busy for. Each small laugh, each tiny handprint of color on his shirt, became a quiet miracle. As the afternoon faded, Ethan sat beneath the old oak tree watching his daughters chase each other across the lawn. He pulled out his phone and opened the message drafts he'd written to Anna over the years, the ones he never sent. Apologies, half-finished sentences, memories too heavy to complete. He scrolled to the bottom, typed a final line, and whispered it aloud. "I kept my promise. She's safe. She's home." Then he deleted them all. The weight lifted, not erased, but finally carried with grace instead of guilt. That evening, they visited the city again, not to the mansion's boardroom, but to the same park where it all began. Grace ran to the old bench by the bakery, laughing as she pointed. "This is where you found me." Ethan knelt beside her. No, he said softly, looking at her with love that filled the air. This is where you found me. She tilted her head. I don't get it. He smiled. One day, you will. Lily tugged on his sleeve. Can we come here every year? He nodded. Every year. To remember where everything started. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, the three of them sat together, a father and his two daughters, framed in gold light and peace. The city buzzed around them, unaware that the richest man in it had just learned that wealth was never made of numbers, but of hearts. Grace leaned into him. Daddy! Yes, sweetheart. Are we happy now? He looked down at her, at the reflection of a woman he once lost and the innocence of a future he refused to waste again, and smiled through tears. Yes, Grace. We're finally happy. The world went quiet for a moment, just the whisper of wind through the leaves, the hum of distant cars, and the heartbeat of something real, the sound of a family healing. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the little girl who waited in the cold and the man who finally came back. Let your click be a way of saying, I felt this. And if you believe in second chances, share this story. Someone out there might need it tonight. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Ethan walked out to the balcony. The sky was deep blue, stars scattered like memories across a calm ocean. He whispered to the wind, Thank you, Anna, for teaching me what love really means. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel haunted. He felt guided. Inside, Grace stirred in her sleep, mumbling softly, Good night, Mommy. Ethan smiled through the tears that fell quietly, resting his hand on her small head. Good night, sweetheart, he whispered. She's watching. The house settled into peaceful silence, no ghosts left, no debts unpaid. Just the soft rhythm of breath, of family, of life. And as the moonlight spilled across the floor, Ethan realized something he'd never understood before. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the pain, it was about choosing to turn it into love. That choice, the one he made too late, yet just in time, was the true inheritance he would leave behind.